welcome to yet another episode of the Mario and Chaos Show. I'm your co-host, Mario Mancini. I'm a former WWE wrestler and co-instructor of Paradise Alley Professional Wrestling, along with a man that's faster than a locomotive. That would be the one, the only, and may I say the incomparable Paul Roma. Big Steve Tracy, the man behind the glass, second generation grappler, the 2020 something into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and that would be my brother Paul Perez.
We'll get there one year.
Through this telephone, through this Zoom COVID podcast, there's a man who's been in this business for over 30 years, and he knows everything from soup to nuts. The emphasis on the nuts. That would be the guardian of chaos. Big Daddy, what's going on?
Mancini, episode 70, season 2. Prior to your appearance here, because it's a very special day on the actual day, Mr. Perez and myself, we went through this date in history of pro wrestling. I'm not sure if it's going to make the air, if it made the cut, if it's going to be on the editor's take, or if it's going to end up on the cutting room floor. But it was interesting stuff that happened at this date in history. And that's what's going to bring me on to what I want to start off on the show. And then I'm going to bounce back to the current news at Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. But this is what season 2, episode 70 is about, Mario. On this date, 36 years ago, you made your pro wrestling WWF debut against Greg the Hammer Valentine. So first off, I want to say happy anniversary. Congratulations, bro. Well deserved. Break it down, Mancini, for the fans here on the Mario and Chaos Show.
Well, we were at the wrestling school, and on the Saturday, and Tony Altamara told us to come the TV taping to watch how the organization runs, to bring our bags because we might work out in Vince's ring that afternoon. And you have to remember something for guys. It was me, AJ Petrucci, Dave Barbie, and Seth Cohen, who was Robbie Parlin. And I was very fortunate to break into the business. Such gentlemen that took care of me because I was only 17 and watched my back. And I don't want to, I don't want to get all sentimental, choked up here, but to this day watches my back. To this very day. So we went there, and you got to remember that Tony told us that we were sparring. And when we turned pro, we would actually apply this stuff. So needless to say, we weren't even privileged. We got kayfabe. Even though we were turning pro, we still weren't privileged. We were marks going in. So we went there, and Tony said, "You guys are working tonight." What? So we all went downstairs and we signed our contract with Gorilla Monsoon. At that time, it was a 2-year contract. And it wasn't a money contract. It was a contract to say that Vince owns you lock, stock, and barrel.
Now, quick question, Mario, about that contract signing with Gorilla Monsoon. The chief, if I remember correctly, because it might be in your screenplay, okay? The chief sent you back to Monsoon to sign the contract. Am I correct about that information?
No. No. I signed the contract. We signed the contract with Monsoon. Then after that, I met Strongbow. Tony introduced us to Strongbow, and he said to me specifically, "Listen to everything this guy tells you, Mario. Every word he says to you." I said, "Okay." And I said,
Ironic question.
"Yeah."
Seeing that you're a legal expert now as your career, is it true? And again, my facts, this is 36 years ago, 37 years ago. Is it true, seeing now, especially where you are in your career, did you ask Gorilla Monsoon if you needed a lawyer present?
I did. I said, "Do I need a lawyer to read this contract?" He said, "Now, if you want to sign this contract."
So continue, Mancini, because I know that was a big point. Just that comment from Gorilla.
Well, I asked Strongbow what he wanted me to do, and he said, "Sit down and keep your mouth shut, and keep your mouth shut and your ears open." And then it came time, and AJ, who really touched me, came all the way up from Pennsylvania to see me be inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2014. Seth, I can't say, he would kill me anyways, but I can't say enough about Seth. Seth's a very private guy. I wish we got a hold of Dave Barbie once, which was good enough for us. He really doesn't want to talk to anybody. But we had rumors that he was dead, so we know he's alive, so that was good enough for us.
Well, thank the Lord.
Yeah, as far as myself, AJ, and Seth, it was enough for us to know that he was alive. So, I look up at the board and it says Valentine v. Mancini. And I looked at Strongbow and I said, "Is this the title match or non-title match? Because I'm gonna beat him. I'm gonna beat him." And he looked over at Tony. I wish I could imitate it, but it's a stare that only Strongbow had. And he looked over at Tony. Tony had the. So.
I didn't tell the kid yet.
Yeah, he had that. So Tony put his arm around me and he said, "Well, why don't you go and talk to Strongbow? Go talk to Valentine." And I said, "Why? Why? I don't want to talk to him. I'm wrestling him. I don't want to say a word with him. I'll do my talking in the ring." Go talk to Valentine. It's okay. So I go up to him hastily. "How you doing, Mario Mancini?" He goes, "Hey, we're working together." I said, "Yeah, I'm wrestling here." He said, "We're working together." I said, "Yeah, I'm wrestling here." He goes, "How long you been in the business?" "Oh, this is my first pro match ever." So Valentine does the lurch, man. He goes, So he goes, "Listen to me. I'm going to slap that figure 4 on you, and the tighter you keep your leg, you're going to hurt yourself. I'm not going to hurt you. You're going to hurt yourself." He goes, "So if you keep them really loose, it'll be okay." And I said, and that's when it hit me. I went, "Oh, it's a setup." And I said, "Do I get to do anything? Do I get a comeback or anything?" And he said, "Absolutely." I said, "Terrific. What is it?" He goes, "After you submit to the figure 4, get off the canvas and come back into the dressing room."
So let me, looking back in retrospect, because I want to bring up some important dates, your memories of those dates and those matches and the arena and where you were. Looking back on 36 years of being in the business since your debut, and now being the current owner of Paradise Alley Professional Wrestling, and I know it's a broad question going 36 years, could you put in a synopsis on your thoughts on the pro wrestling landscape and your career and where you are now as a promoter from starting in 1986? I know it's a vast question, Mario. If you could put that into a brief synopsis before I bring up some very special dates.
Well, from 1984 to 2020, I think it's been a nice little tight little experience. You know, a lot of people look at it as a wow, and you know I do not. You know, personally, as a pro wrestler in the WWE, what really was the WWF, I had high hopes because I knew I was a good wrestler, but I had high hopes, and a lot of the guys liked me, and I think Vince himself liked me. I mean, one time my friend Jack McAdoo, he was a limo driver, and he picked Vince up. And Vince was in the back seat, and he goes, "Oh, well, we have mutual friends." And Vince goes, "Yeah, who's that?" And he goes, "Mario Mancini." And Jack said, "Oh, he lit up Mario, a big smile on his face. He's, hey, how is Mario?" You know. So I like to think I was well liked, and I was hoping for a break. I was, when I call it a nice tight gig thing, a little. I was never in a Survivor Series. I was never in a WrestleMania. I was never in a pay-per-view event. The closest I ever got to being in a big event was breaking up a fight at the War to settle the score against Piper and Hogan and all those guys. So I had a very modest, almost kind of a sleeper kind of career. I mean, people look back on it and say, you know, Taker's first match, Bundy's first match, Demolition's first match twice, the Big Bully Busey, Hercules Fernandez, the Hart Foundation. I get it, but that's my claim to fame. So I look at it. I'm not going to be standing at the podium at the WWE Hall of Fame. So I had more than a cup of coffee, a lot more than a cup of coffee. I might have had an appetizer and a couple of forkfuls of the main course, but I never.
You had a whole pot of coffee, in my opinion.
I might have got to the appetizer and had a couple of forkfuls of the main course, but I never got the dessert. So, but I still have recognition. I still get the respect, and there's a difference. You know, the people who know me very well know that, you know, I've been through a lot when it comes to the topic of love. I've been through a lot, and it's been a struggle.
Suave de bonheur.
Yeah, it's been a struggle. You know, I just wanted to repeat what my mother and father did, which was be married for 65 years, and I couldn't even accomplish that many years between 3 marriages. So, you know, people who know me know that I've had too much therapy and I've read too many self-help books. But I try to help as many people as I could, not to make the mistakes I made. But and when I say mistakes, I'm out of these marriages because I made emotional mistakes, not cheating or anything like it. They were just, you know, emotional mistakes. That being said, when I say I get the respect, I command, because there's a difference between somebody who commands respect and a person who demands respect. The person who demands respect will never get it, but a person who commands respect will. So
very valid point, Mancini. Valid point.
So I'm thankful for that, and I have an autograph convention coming up on September 19th in Hartford. You know, I thank God I still get phone calls for that, and so I had a nice from 84 to now. I have a nice little thing. I wasn't Seinfeld. You know, I wasn't Elvis. You know, I think the guy who did that kind gentleman who did the documentary on me on YouTube, so like 20-minute documentary on me, I think he said it the best. I wasn't Luke Skywalker. but I was, what do they call those guys in white?
Stormtrooper?
Storm.
Yeah, I was, I was a stormtrooper. So, at least I was, and Perez was a stormtrooper. We were stormtroopers, and there's one, and Perez is the farthest thing from a cocky person, but, if people want to criticize us, we can look and smile and go, we were there.
Well, Mario, I want to speak to
We
that.
were there. You know what I mean?
Not only were you guys there, I want to speak to your accomplishments, and then we'll get back to where you are in present day. It's well documented that you were in Pro Wrestling Illustrated Top 500 when it meant something, when it wasn't just a dirt sheet and it just throw people's names in there because they're a wrestler. You were in the PW Pro Wrestling Illustrated when it meant something. You were the youngest professional wrestler in World Wrestling Federation on this date in history 36 years ago. We documented The Undertaker, King Kong Bundy, Hercules Hernandez, Demolition, the Hart Foundation, Big Bully Deuce, the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame class of 2014 with Harley Race, Greg Valentine, Davey Boy Smith, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Jose Luis Rivera. It's well documented where you've been. Top 3, and I'm going to say it, I don't care, I consider it a compliment, top 3 jobbers in WWE history, and top 10 of all time, including the NWA, WCW, ECW, WWE. That is quite the accomplishment, and then to be mentioned on Busted Open Radio in current day, and to now own your own company, and that's why I jumped in. You talked about the early part of your career. I wanted to document it before we go back to the special dates, leading to where you are now as an owner and trainer of your own organization. Can we talk about that now that we talked about briefly your run in WWF?
I am the owner of Paradise Alley. I'm an instructor at Paradise Alley because of Big Steve Tracy. Because of Big Steve Tracy. And only because of Big Steve Tracy. So, I didn't do this on my own accomplishments. He turned the key to the door and opened it up and said, "This is yours." That's what he did. So, have we been successful? I think we have. Have we made a lot of money? I don't think so. Do we have a great reputation? Do we have fans? Yes, we do. Do we have a great reputation? Yes, we do. That's because myself, Perez, Roma, and Big Steve have been in the WWF, and we've seen the way it was run, and the etiquette that was involved with it. And Paul Roma runs a tight ship. Paul Roma runs a tight ship. You know what? He is there at the school. He is there at the shows, especially. And he calls those shots. And nobody questions him. You know what? And he might laugh if he hears this. And he goes, "Hey, listen, I was thinking about doing," I go, "Okay." "Hey, listen, I don't want it." I go, "Okay, well." But that's all he hears from me is okay and yes. That's all he hears from me, because I want him to have that reign. I want him to have that power, because as he says to me jokingly, which is really a shoot, am I ever wrong? When it comes to calling a storyline, an angle, calling a finish, doing this way, that way, right up to setting up the chairs and the position of the ring, he's always on the money. And with a guy like that, you don't walk up to a man like that and go, "Hey, I think you might have," you got to be out of your mind. Plus,
That's a very valid point, Mario.
Right.
I've been around 1,000 independent organizations. I never worked for Vince McMahon. Obviously, we know that. But out of all the groups I've been around, the whole country, all the different independents that I've worked with, you could tell the difference between working for Paradise Alley, yourself, Roma, Perez, and Big Steve, than working for any company I did for 30 years dwelling in the independents. You walk into Paradise Alley, and like you said, from soup to nuts, to the storylines, to the psychology, to the emotional investment, to setting up the chairs, to the time you let people in and giving a locker room speech, there's a difference. And it's that World Wrestling Federation, WCW, professional, big time, that Paradise Sport brings to wrestling. You can tell the difference when you walk into the arena.
You know, Roma has guys inboxing them every day. You know, we have guys that work for us once that call them back, go, hey man, when can I get booked again? I have Bull James, who became a very good friend of mine, inboxes me and says, come on, brother, love working for you guys. You know, book me again, you know? So, you know, people love working for us.
Now, that's the same Bull James. Now, Mario, because that's the same Bull James that was Bull Dempsey in NXT. Am I correct?
Right. So he's old school. This is a guy that could have easily fit in 1984. Easily. So, you know, people love working for us. The females love working for us. Females die to work for us.
Well, I'm gonna give a perfect example, Mario. Here's the females that have worked for Paradise Alley in the past, and right now 2 of them are having a huge impact on the big time major wrestling scene. One of them is Deonna Purrazzo, who is the former Paradise Alley Center Ring Divas champion for our own Paradise Alley. Deonna was unbelievable. She was at Dieselmania 3, I believe, or maybe it was Dieselmania 2 with Booker T and AR Fox. It was an unbelievable event. Then it was Ivelisse, who is now in AEW feuding with Diamante. She was also a Paradise Alley Center Ring Divas champion. Look at Christina Marie, who was one of the top women in the Northeast, and then even one of your own personal favorites, who's down in South Beach right now, living a life, and that would be Tequila Rose, a.k.a. Rosalie the Makeup Queen, and let's not forget, Double Tough Allison Jade. So there's a lot of history there, Mario, with female grapplers as well.
And they love working for us, with the exception of Jade, because that's like another daughter of mine. But these other female wrestlers, you know, even when we get female students, I go, there are no males, there are no females. You're wrestlers. You're going to be treated like wrestlers. So there's no shenanigans, there's no games, there's nothing.
Well, Roman's not tolerating it.
Yeah. You're wrestlers, male or female. You're wrestlers.
Paul Perez always says that. Perez corrects me every time, and he says, "Chaos, I don't know why you got to say it. Male wrestler, female wrestler," and Paul Perez, who's the most humble, respectful guy in the business, when he says it, people listen. They're just wrestlers, and I agree with
they're just wrestlers. Where these other promoters got in trouble is you know, they saw hot females. They they wanted to get their hands on. This is what I saw. I saw a wrestler that's a good athlete who has a great body that is going to sell tickets. You know what I mean? Male or female, you know what? You're put together well. You're a good athlete. You're going to sell tickets. So, you know, that's why we're so successful, because, you know, we run it professionally and people want to work for it. Another thing, too, is, you know, Roma lays down the law and then he's outside all night. You know, he's outside all night doing one of these, watching from afar. He's not in the dressing room going this and that and this. You come here, I got to talk to you, this and that. No, there are no egos there. You know, this is what I want. Have fun in the dressing room. I'll watch the product when you guys come out.
Well, speaking of Roma, that's a great segue, because I saw you the other night, Mario. Now it's well documented, although it's a new show, it's a new series, the fans may not be totally aware of it. And you were on there as a guest the other night. Fans, if you're not watching every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 o'clock on Facebook Live, and soon to be on Twitch TV, if you do not watch Maintaining the Truth with Paul Roma and with his host Avi Klein, who was a former grappler himself, Roma will tell you on there what it's all about, what Paradise Alley is all about, talking about his career. And Mario, when he had you on Avi Klein's show the other day, Maintaining the Truth, you guys spoke to the kinship and the relationship all the way back from World Wrestling Federation in the 80s, you're 35 years together, to present day Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. And that's what I would like you to speak to, and being on Maintaining the Truth and what Roma brings to Paradise Alley before we get on to the special dates of your career on this date in history.
Well, Roman's the greatest athlete I've ever seen in my life. Out of any sport on the planet. I mean, Avi still talks about that match with Alex Wright, where Roma leaped practically halfway across the ring up on the second rope, then got
he
himself
still does it today. He still
right
does it.
without touching the ropes. But more than that, it's the person that Roman is. And as I said in his induction speech into the Hall of Fame, the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, the misunderstood person Roman is. If you meet him for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you know what I mean?
No, he's not a hard guy to misunderstand. I mean,
No,
he shoots from the hip.
No, I tell the students, I go, what you have to worry about is if Roma never talks to you. If Roma decides that he's never going to talk to you, you're in a lot of trouble. But let me tell you something. If that vein is going across his forehead and he's yelling at you and he's swearing at you, he loves you. That sounds ridiculous, right? But it's true, because he's getting so amped up that he's doing everything he can to help you, and he's trying to get through to your head because he cares about it. So basically, when it comes to Roma and, Paradise Alley, it's the person that he is. It's the guy that people don't know, prays before he goes to bed and prays when he leaves the front door every day. You know what I mean? And he's a very strong American. He's a very patriotic human being.
Well, like me, he supports law enforcement. He supports the flu. We here on the Mario and Chaos show and at Paradise Alley, we are very pro law enforcement, supporting the blue line, and there's no two ways about that.
Right, in the military, and he,
of course,
you know what I mean. And our national anthem, his father fought for our freedom. My father fought for our freedom. So we're very big advocates on that, and we definitely see eye to eye on that. And he's just an all around good person. As far as being a professional wrestler, I'm not going to say underrated, because I think that people who really know pro wrestling know what kind of wrestler and athlete Roma was. Underused, I'll definitely say underused. Wasn't used to his full potential. When you have Kurt Hennig just receiving a gimmick and walking over to you and looking you in the face and going, "This shouldn't be mine, it should be yours. You should be Mr. Perfect, not me."
Well, that says it all. That says it all right there.
You know what I mean?
I mean, it really does.
He was underused. They didn't even know how to use him in the WCW, even though he became one of the Four Horsemen and the two-time tag team champion. It was. This is my opinion. It was nice that Roma had a run with Herc. It was nice that Roma had a run with Arnie Anderson. It was nice that Roma had a run with Paul Orndorff. If I was Vince McMahon, I would have had that guy all by himself.
Listen, and you guys talked about it on Maintaining the Truth on Roma's show. Here was Roma back in the day in the World Wrestling Federation that gave a drop kick where one of his feet hit John Studd in the forehead and the other foot went over his head.
His left foot was on his forehead. Yeah, his left foot was on his forehead and his right foot was over his head. And John Studd was 6'10".
Well, here's what I want to talk about, Mario, because this is 36 years ago, your debut. I want to bring up a date because we're talking about the head trainer, we're talking about maintaining the truth, we're talking about Roma, who was very influential in your career. I want to bring up a date, it still is to this day, as family as we all are. 1990, in Warwick, Rhode Island, or it might have been Providence, Rhode Island, Mancini, at a house show, you against Paul Roma. Do you, since seeing, listen, Avi Klein said it, Roma said it, even the magnificent Don Morocco, who has his own show with Avi, he said it too. You have an unbelievable memory. Do you remember 1990, Rhode Island against Roma? Because I want to talk about your experiences with Roma in the ring, with Perez in the ring, as partners, and Roma as a foe that night in Rhode Island.
It probably was a run-of-the-mill match. The match I remember more is me against Roma in the New Haven Coliseum.
On my notes, Mancini, that's on my notes.
I don't. Was that a TV taping?
I believe it was a TV taping for Superstars.
Me against Roma. Are you sure about that?
Well, I'm not positive, Mancini. I got to look through my notes.
You know, I certainly would have remembered if I did a job for Roma. And because I walked away going, gee, how come I never did a job for him and Rennie? You know what I mean? I don't remember. I remember everything. You're right. I don't remember doing a job for Roma in 1990 in Rhode Island. I don't. I remember.
I have it written down here, so I'm guaranteeing unless CageNet or Fandom or Wikipedia are wrong, I will double check my facts. Listen, we know what Bully Ray says, but let's move on to other times. Now let's break down the match at New Haven Coliseum with Roma, Mancini.
I went to New Haven to say hi to the boys, and I looked at Strongboat about 5 o'clock, and I said, I'm starving. I'm going to get something to eat. And back there in the 80s, to eat like $20 worth of Chinese food was a lot of Chinese food. And I walked back about 10 after 6. I stopped and got Strongbow sauce pepper sub. And he goes, "Hey, kid, where you been?" I go, "Chief, I told you I was hungry. I go, what's up?" He goes, "I need you to work." I go, I just ate my ass off, Chief. He goes, "Yeah." Who? I go, "Who am I working with?" He goes, "Roma." I go, "Oh, that's no problem." So I go in to see Roma, and big smile on my face. I go, "Hey, man, I'm working with you. You know, I'm gonna heal against you." I said, "Man, I just ate a ton of Chinese food." He looked at me like Clint Eastwood.
How the fuck did you tell him that?
He looked at me like Clint Eastwood, and he looks at me and goes, "You got two choices. You could stick your finger in your throat. You could stick your finger in your throat and throw up in the bathroom, or you could throw up out there." And it was just a rib, and I said, "He's my buddy. That would never happen." And he started off the match crisscrossing, leapfrogging, drop kicking, and I just took a powder and I went out underneath the apron and I lost it out there. I went back into the ring and we had a great match. And I went back to the dressing room and Strongbow said, "When they take down the ring, you're going to clean that up, right?" And I said, "Yeah, Chief." He goes, "That's not fair to the ring guy." Right? And I was
Mario, seeing that Paradise Alley and our connection to the World Wrestling Federation, the old-time territory of the New Haven Arena, the New Haven Coliseum, and the historic New Haven County, and how Vince ran here for years, I want to personally touch to your matches here in the Constitution State and the different times, and I'll run through your opponents and the matches, and maybe you can give me some of your memories here, and the fans could get back to us on some of the questions. But here's some of your bigger moments, Mancini. On this date, 36 years ago, your debut. Let's run over the local matches for the World Wrestling Federation. With the Conquistador, Mario, you teamed up at the Coliseum against the Rougeau brothers and Danny Davis. Any memories of that?
Yeah.
Break it down.
Yeah. Well, they took it on me. I know that.
Well, Mancini, you also had some unbelievable matches. I'm going to throw out another match where you teamed up with Stevie Aoki and Lanny Poffo against Volkov, the Sheik, and Butch Reed, also in New Haven Coliseum. Do you remember facing, if the facts are correct here, Mancini? You know I do my research. I have more sources, so many sources.
I remember that match, yeah. I remember that match.
Hercules Hernandez. Did you face Hercules in the New Haven Coliseum, Mario? Is that a true fact?
I did.
Any memories on facing Roma's former partner, Power and Glory, at the Coliseum?
You know,
I just wanted to throw these out.
at that point, Ray and I were really good friends at that point after I did his debut in Poughkeepsie. You know, it was probably TV taping in New Haven. So, you know, it went as planned, but, you know, it's always fun to wrestle somebody that you're really close to.
I'm going to throw out a couple of matches where you also worked at the Hartford Civic Center, another big arena here in the Constitution State, teaming with David Isley against Boris Zukov and Nikolai Volkov at the Hartford Civic Center. Also, Mario, a one-man matchup against the one-man gang at the Civic Center.
Yeah, I remember that.
Your thoughts on the gang, and also against Kamala in the Hartford Civic Center. Your thoughts on two huge men that are legends.
Well, both of them, believe it or not, were really light to the point where I had to tell Kamala to hit me a little harder. Because it was hard for me to sell for him because those chops were so light. Sometimes he missed me. So I had to tell him to lay it in a little bit so I can sell it well, you know. And of course, the gang was always the gang. Nobody knows this, but the gang was a nerd. He was just
yes.
a big nerd.
You are correct about that. Jim Cornette has stated that on this podcast.
Yeah, it's just a big nerd back there with his glasses. Without his glasses, he's blind as a bat and he's squinting all over the place, you know. The one-man gang, a true alter ego to George. So, you know, he was really good to work with. But in the Harvard Civic Center in a house show, what the most memorable moment, other than the Taker's debut in Harvard.
That Mancini, that is correct for the fans out there. I believe Meltzer reported this on the Observer or on the Torch. Maybe it was Wade Keller. That's where the debut was for yourself and the Undertaker, was at the Hartford Civic Center.
Right, but what I remember the most, other than Taker's match, was working with Ken Patera in the steel cage in a house show. So that was kind of interesting. So it lasted all the 2 minutes, but it was interesting going into the cage.
Well, especially with Ken Patera, Olympic strongman. I mean, represented this country, a true legend, and one legit badass. I want to throw this date out at you, Mario. June 23rd, 1987. Harley Race, King Kong Bundy, and the aforementioned Hercules Hernandez take on the young stallions of Paul Roma and Jim Powers and yourself. Your thoughts on that?
I remember that match. Yeah, I remember that match. And I can remember being disgusted because, you know, Powers just could never keep his mouth shut.
And that was against the Heenan family. I'm correct about that. That's when they were the Heenan station.
Right.
Mancini, I want to throw another date at you because they're all connected here. Because you were just talking with Morocco. He recognized you on his Making the Waves podcast. Morocco's an unbelievable listen. May 1987, Mario Mancini and Corporal Kirshner against the legendary The Rock, the original Rock, Don Morocco and Bob Orton. Do you remember that one, Mancini?
Yeah.
I know I'm throwing a lot at you.
Yeah, no, of course I remember most of them, Big Daddy, but I particularly remember the ones with Morocco because, you know, I just, as a fellow professional, you know, it's kind of like a carpenter or any other job. You know, you admire other people's work. And I think I admired his work the most as a heel. You know, they say, The Rock or Stone Cold or, Roddy Piper, the best promo in the business. The best promo in the history of professional wrestling is Tom Rock. The best promos ever.
Listen, I would have to say he's definitely in the top 5. I said it on the Worldwide Dino Costa show on Chaos Corner. I also said Jake the Snake Roberts, Mancini.
True.
I want to bring up this date in history, and maybe our producer will remember this because it was for WWF Superstars episode taping number 271. And we talked about this many, many, many times. Yourself and Perez from the New Haven Coliseum against the Nasty Boys. I hate to always bring this up, man.
And you
Perez,
know what?
let Perez tell the story.
Yeah.
There's nothing to tell. I mean, they came down the aisle. The Nasty Boys came down the aisle. Mario and I were already in the ring. And I think I just looked over at Mario and goes, and I say, I hate those guys. I think Mario just started chuckling.
Yeah, man. Listen, that I always remembered more than anything when it came to tag teaming on TV, because I thought it was pretty cool that Perez and I were in there. And, while we're standing there waiting for these, gagoots to walk down the aisle, I said, I said to myself, what if they ever did anything with this, for God's sakes? You know what I mean? Because it's no secret. I didn't say how much of a master wrestler Perez was. And there's an example, 2 guys that had just a ton of talent and just went out there and took bumps for guys who, the reason why I get so hot about guys like the Nasty Boys is because I didn't think they respected the business. I didn't think that they appreciated their position or even respected the business. I think they actually thought they were where they should be. And you know what? No one in the wrestling business should be where they think they should be, which is why Vince McMahon gets a rap, because you got Bret Hart coming in and you can hear a pin drop. He, way before Anvil showed up, he showed up by himself, and he was pretty much, he didn't have a lot of expression. He concentrated on his work in the ring, which is fine. But some of his theatrics were lacking. And then all of a sudden they put him with Neidhart, and then all of a sudden they call him the Hitman. And all of a sudden they're the Hart Foundation, and all of a sudden he starts flourishing. Well, that's because of Vince McMahon.
Yeah, he saw that Neidhart was animated and needed to get right over that one.
Yeah, that's because of Vince McMahon. It's just like when Harley Race came in with the leather and the chaps and the hat in front of his face, and Harley Race and Harley Davidson didn't work. It didn't work, but Harley Davidson became Vince McMahon, became Hillbilly Jim.
That's right, Mancini.
That's because of Vince McMahon. You know what I mean? The Dingo Warrior became the Ultimate Warrior. That's because of Vince McMahon. The Incredible Hulk Hogan became the Hulkster, and Hulkamania was born because of Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon was so ruthless because he fired this one and fired that one, he fired that one, because the guys started believing their own hype. And Vince McMahon sat behind his desk and said, I made you, I will break you.
That's a true statement.
Who are you? The only reason you are who you are is because I created you.
Yeah, and these guys think they're bigger than the business.
You're right. And that's why Vince would get mad and say, hey, and that's why Vince would get a hold of an agent on a Thursday night somewhere in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and say, tell him he's got to do a job, see what he says. hey man, you got to do a job tonight. What? I've been going over for 4 months. Why do I got to do a job? You know what I mean? Because you've been going over for 4 months because Vince McMahon's been putting you over for 4 months.
Now Mario, I want to talk about, we were talking about TV tapings and different events here locally. And I did come up with some more notes on my research of your extenuous career. And we've talked about this on past episodes, but this is a special day to have the podcast on your actual debut day. I look back at my notes here, Mario, and in 1987, it was TV in New Haven against Reed, Volkov, and Sheik. Also in New Haven, 1987, against Hercules Hernandez, was for WWF Superstars, episode number 27. Yourself and Kamala in Hartford was on the Wrestling Challenge team in episode number 2. These are all the different episodes that are on the WWE network and things that I found. What I really want to ask you about, Mancini, as we transition here and cover certain big events in your career, and you might be able to go through this. We debated this once before on certain title shots that you may or may not have had, and you could correct me. I have down here that on WWF's Wrestling Challenge episode number 15 on TV in Chicago, Illinois, that you went up for the Intercontinental Championship against Randy Macho Man Savage. Is this true statement, Mancini? John Fandom, it's in the book.
I guess so. I guess, when the champ walks into the ring with the belt, I mean, if he slips on a banana peel and you pin him, I mean, unless the ring announcer states this is a non-title match, I guess so.
I do have matches on here. Here's another thing that I want to talk about, Mario. Also a gentleman who's been around quite a while, was at the Quest facility back in the day, and you teamed up with this man, Butchie Savage, Butchie Mayo, against Arn Tully, the Brainbusters. What are your memories? Because Butch still steps into the school on Monday nights recently and talks to some of the students. Any memories of that matchup against the Brainbusters? Because I know you worked them several times, Mario.
No, not really. It's probably the same old thing,
Here's a big event because we've talked about it before. Madison Square Garden, and I do believe your opponent was Tony Atlas. Am I correct? You wrestled in the Garden 3 times.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
Break down your experiences and your career about being in Madison Square Garden as a competitor and your match specifically against your longtime friend, Tony Atlas.
Well, Atlas that night, being a good wrestling student, when he got me up for the press slam, being a good wrestling student, I had my hands on his shoulders. So as he pushed up, I pushed down to help him press me. And he said, "Hey kid, get your hands off my shoulders." And I was just in his hands in midair, and he just pressed me right over his head, dead weight. 235 right over his head.
That's what you were weighing in at that time, Mancini?
In 84, 85, yeah.
Wow.
So, the other 2 were battle royals. So,
Mancini, I also have this down as a documented championship match that you were involved with, and this was for the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team titles. It was on TV from Poughkeepsie, where you teamed up with another longtime friend, a legend in the World Wrestling Federation, Tony Garea, against Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch in Poughkeepsie for the tag team titles.
Love Tony Garea, always will. Wasn't a big fan of Adonis. Murdoch was okay. Wasn't a big fan of Adonis at all. So may he rest in peace. That's all I have to say about that.
I want to throw another big date out here, Mancini. This was at the beginning of your career. In the Hartford Civic Center, you briefly touched on it. Steel Cage Turmoil with yourself, John Studd, Angelo Mosca, Bobby Heenan, the Moondogs, Mr. Fuji, Rocky Johnson, S.E. Jones, Tito Santana, the Chief Jay Strongbow, David Schultz, David Sammartino, the Hammer, Ken Patera. Break down the Steel Cage Turmoil in Hartford that you briefly touched on.
It was a battle royal elimination match in a steel cage. So basically, two guys went out in a steel cage, and whoever won, a new guy went in to face the winner. I was the new guy to go in to face the winner. And the winner of that particular bout before mine was Ken Patera.
Mancini, just to be in the ring with those legends in that era, which we call the golden era. This is why when I pay homage to you and you kayfabe me and you throw me under the bus and Big Daddy, do I got to continue to hear it? Now you know why I respect and admire you from the bottom of my heart and what I talk about because of what you've accomplished in this business. And I don't give a fuck what you think about it. I want to throw this out at you. A big night in front of your home crowd. 1985. House show. And I believe it was your only victory in the New Haven Coliseum against Gino Carabello. Can you speak to that night at the Coliseum in front of you?
Amazing. That was amazing. It was amazing because there were like four guys that I graduated high school with in the front row. That night, I was in my house before I went. I just went to say hi. Gino and I were just going in to say hi. And let's face it, to see if we can get a spot. Never thinking we'd work with each other. And, you know, they have documented that match went 12 minutes. It did not go 12 minutes because we went in there and, you know, before I left, I asked everybody in my family if they wanted to come. And they said, are you booked on it? And I went, no. And they go, nah, all knows. So Gino and I walk in about 6:15 and Arnie goes nuts. And I go, what's wrong, Arnie? He goes, the plane's going to be late. No, it's a half hour late. I need 30 minutes from you guys. I said, not a problem. No sweat. So he looked at me and said, what do you have for a finish? And, you know, I got a little tinkle. I go, I got a reverse flying body press from the second rope. He said, use it. So Gino and I went out there and we tore it up, you know. It was a great start of the match, too, because the bell rang, and we went to square off, and Gino looked at me and just let a big loop go right across the ring onto me, and then I took one step toward him, and he ran and screwed out of the ring, and we were running after each other out of the ring. He'd scoop back underneath, and I'd go running after him, put the boots to me, and he went to throw me in. I reversed it, gave him a hip toss, 2 arm drags and a slam, and he powdered out there for a while. So, you know, and before that even happened, he did the jacket gig where people were whistling and he'd throw it back on. So by the time that hip toss, 2 arm drags and a slam came, we might have already been 7-8 minutes in. That's how much time we killed between the jacket and the spit and going around. And so, you know, we went over 20, and the referee finally came in and said, okay, everybody's here, you can take it home. And, you know, he gave me one buckle, he gave me the second buckle, and you know, by the time Finkel was 3 feet away from me when he announced me as the winner, I couldn't even hear him. I mean, the place was shaking. It was incredible. And that's the night I went out to Arnie, and I said, listen, he goes, good kid, great, that was great. They popped because I live 20 minutes away. But I promise you, if I get the chance, I can do the same thing in St. Louis. I just need a chance. He goes, I know. You know
Excellent segue, Mancini, with Arnold Skaaland. Now, I'm going to bring this up currently at Paradise Alley Professional Wrestling, and it's on your jacket, and you are called Arnie, as Roma is called Pops, like Alpha from the Wild Samoans, and that's how you guys are looked at. And I want to bring up this, we must be on the same telepathy and wavelength here, Mancini. I want to bring up this memory, and you can speak on it. We're going back to the Providence Civic Center in Providence, Rhode Island. WWF Superstars, episode number 204 for TV, 1990. And according to fandom and Cage.net, Cage News, this is where I get my information, Mancini. WWF World Tag Team titles, yourself and Arnold Skaaland against Demolition. Can you speak to that night?
I can guarantee you with almost 100% certainty with Arnie at that point, being in his 70s, it was probably his son George Skolin and
And
myself.
this is 1990, Mancini. 1990 at that point,
Yeah.
maybe it was George Skolin.
Yeah, it was George Skolin and myself.
Okay, again, you give me 5 spots. I fuck up 4 of them. At least I got the last name right. Your
Did.
thoughts on teaming up with Arnie's son against Demolition for the titles, Mancini?
Well, it was the shits because it was Arnie's son, and they had to take it on me. I did probably 3 or 4 house shows with George. You know, and what are you gonna do? It's Arnold Skolin's kid. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when George Scott was the booker and he asked me to travel with his son. His son was being a referee. You know what I mean? So George Scott's the booker at the time. He was, right underneath Vince. But I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to go on the road with your kid. You know what I mean?
I want to bring up this name also, Mancini, another local connection. This also said, as I go through the notes, I look for title matches because there were few and far between, and only you can verify it. This was for TV also. Yourself and Sal Giordano, Sal G, and Poughkeepsie against the Sheik and Volkov. It says it was for the tag team titles, Mancini. Can you speak to Sal Giordano and your connection there against Sheik and Volkov, who you worked many times?
Sal G, I'm going to give you a Somerset
A
flip.
Somerset flip.
A Somerset flip. I'm going to give you a Somerset flip. Business as usual. Sal goes in there, threw a couple drop kicks, pad me in. Volkov put me over his head, slammed me. Sheik came in, gave me the camel clutch.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Well, let me bring up another name, Mancini. God rest his soul. A guy who did big things down in world-class championship wrestling. And you teamed up with him several times back in 1987 against Kamala and Tama, who was the Godfather, with the hose, Zukov and Volkov, and that was with Jerry Allen. Your thoughts
Jerry
on
Allen was
teaming
a
with
great guy. I love Jerry Allen. May he rest in peace. That was a sad death. That was a freak accident. Jerry Allen was a great kid. I liked him.
Jerry Allen was a big dude, and he was an excellent wrestler, and he had a lot of success down in world-class championship wrestling. Mancini, Perez, how many minutes in are we? Because I want to quickly touch on Mancini's Canada career. He was very
It's an hour. We're in an hour.
All right, well,
Yeah.
we'll hold off on that, Mancini. But you had a big career in Canada. I'll quickly run it down. Everywhere from Hacksaw, Jim Duggan to Sergeant Slaughter. You teamed with Phil Apollo, Barry Hardy, Bob Bradley. You worked against everyone from the Bushwhackers to the Rockers. You just had an unbelievable career in Canada, as did Paul Perez. This is what I want to talk about here on episode 70, season 2. First off, fans, I'm going to get this out of the way. Please go to sweetdeal.com for all your CBD needs. Mr. Hempel-Stilskin, fans, it's the wave of the future if you're an athlete. For all your CBD needs, use the promo code CHAOS and you'll get 25% off for Sweet Deal. My buddy, Mr. Hempel-Stilskin. Also, every Thursday night on the worldwide Dino Costa show for Chaos Corner. You're not going to want to miss it. But here's the breaking news, Mario. You asked me earlier if I was allowed to put this out. You're the boss. I was allowed to put it out by the gentlemen that are running this. Breaking news. August 29th at the Paradise Alley Professional Wrestling Training Facility, we're going to have a special Saturday alley fights. 3 shows, 1 day. 3:30, 5:30, and 7:30 is the information that's coming out. All the champions will be there. We're going to be going by state and local government guidelines through the CDC. Face masks will be mandatory. We will be changing the ring aprons, the ropes, the turnbuckles, sanitizing, social distancing. Can you speak to the breaking news to keep our fans and the public and our talent on August 29th at Alley Fights, Mancini? Break it down, what you know.
There are going to be 3 shows spaced apart, probably 4 matches, maybe 5 matches a show.
Now, Mancini, from what I understand, there's going to be concessions available. It's going to be right there at the facility. And
Saban and I will be there, yeah. Saban and I, maybe Latino will show.
Well, maybe that would be nice. Muy caliente. And this is what the fans.
Well, no, Big Daddy, when you say Latino, you might think of Cafe Pastulo. But in this particular situation, you might be thinking of a triple espresso. When it comes to Latino, maybe a crisp cannoli. Or maybe a with a bell.
Wow.
That only Latino can do the Latino way. So anyway, Kevin and I will be there with.
Well, this is what I want fans to understand. One thing.
We will be there with Mancini's weenies and Saban's sausages and Big Daddy's patties and
I like that, Mancini. Mancini's weenies.
So he's already got a big head, man. You're gonna name a fucking food item after him?
And now Big Daddy's patties. How the fuck do I have a big head, correct?
Look at it.
Yeah.
I got the brain of a dehydrated baby, but this is what I wanted to get onto my point that fans don't understand. And Roma said it on Maintaining the Truth, and I keep bringing it up because you have to watch. What Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling has down at the facility is an actual WWE ring. Top of the line, top notch, from World Wrestling Entertainment itself, Mancini. That's what the fans don't realize. And if they don't come down on August 29th to Saturday Alley Fights, it's going to be 3 big events. All the stars are going to be there. All the titles will be on the line. This will be our first show back since the Hercules Hernandez Memorial Tournament.
And I might have a special guest stopping by who's driving through to Philadelphia. So I'll have you announce that, Big Daddy. I'll tell you off the air and when it's confirmed, and you can announce it to the fans. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week for episode number 71, which I have no Yankee for. So, until next week, as Casey Kasem said, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. I'm going to bed.
Happy anniversary, Mancini.
Thanks, Big Daddy. Thank you, guys. Thank you, brother.